All right, I'm going to solve the riddle as quickly as I can. So, firstly, the bushland section is not necessarily worse habitat for those birds than the northeast corner. It comes down to habitat usability, another factor altogether. What could be influencing the habitat usability? Well, the surrounding context is always important to look at. And up in the north half of the Botanic Gardens, it is dominated by introduced trees. Everything else is the same as the south half. So the ratio of lawns to scattered trees, the neat little garden beds around the edges, all that exactly the same, but the south half is eucalypt dominated. And that has resulted in a difference in the abundance of noisy miners between the two halves. They make up 30% of the bird community in the south half and only 9% of the bird community in the northern half. That's because the incentive is not there for the noisy miners to defend that space. They're not getting the resources that they need because the eucalypts are absent. And the key one there is lerp, or the sugary cases made by psyllids. They're just not in the northern half. So there's a lot less incentive for noisy miners to defend it. But then beyond that, there are some important structural differences. There we go, there's a noisy miner right there. Some important structural differences in the two plantings that I'll now outline. Alrighty, look at a few things. Look at the vegetation height. That's probably just about the tallest tree in here. And look at that slope down. Now, if you're a noisy miner wanting to defend a space, there's a lot of clutter in your way, and there's also a lot of dense visual barriers preventing you from seeing things in there. But really remember that skirt of vegetation. It happens on a smaller scale here too. But have a look as well at the spacing of trees in here. You won't see trees right up against each other growing like totem poles. You see broad spreading trees. The average distance between the trees in this northeast corner is about 10 meters. What that results in, or allows for, is more growth and more density in the understory. That's already almost an inevitability of having broader tree spacing, but then you also have pruning, which increases that density even further. And you've also got irrigation, only increasing it even further again. And no doubt helping things like the scrub wrens that are fossicking around in the leaf litter for landhoppers and stuff like that. All right, what do we notice that's different? Quite a few things straight away. Tree spacing, more like 1 or 2 meters between trees in here. So you get basically totem poles with this like missing block of complexity through there, where really those other trees didn't have to shoot up really high. They were spreading in this zone, and that also joined with a tapering of the vegetation towards the grassy edges. Here you've got a reversal of that structure. You've got a hollowing out, really. You've got lookout posts that can see straight down, out in all directions, that are perfect for the noisy miners. Now, the high density of trees within reduces the amount of available resources for the understory, which means that, well, this might look like dense understory from a distance, but have a look inside. If you were a bird this size, getting away from a bird that size, where do you actually go to not be followed? You can't, you're always on the run. Then there's the fact that the shrubs aren't pruned in here as well, because the thinking is, well, this is the wild section, so we'll plant trees sort of everywhere and not prune anything because it's wild. But we're forgetting that in nature, pruning happens by kangaroos and wallabies, and a little bit further back, diprotodons. That's most of the evolutionary history of these plants. They have been pruned. But we often shift our baselines, don't we? So now it's natural to not have any pruning going on in our minds, and that results in super leggy plants that often don't suit the birds very well. All right, so the take home isn't let's plant more, introduce plants. The take home is that there's a few factors that come together to make these small patches in urban parks particularly vulnerable. And we can affect all of those. So we can make better tree choices around our lawns so we're not putting out lerps and nectar and inviting the noisy miners in. We can plant sheoaks and acacias, which are going to pump out insects instead, which can't actually be defended by aggression, like those sugary exudates. And if we want these little patches to function well for small bush birds in this context, then fortification is quite necessary